Welcome again. We're going to talk about evil, and evil as we have been raised to consider it in our training through our very various spiritual and religious groups, basically is the world. The world being evil, and we are to shun the things of the world and so forth. But if we look in the Bible, we have to come away with a question. There is a question mark that goes up next to that as far as I'm concerned. So is it the world that is evil, or is religion, which has called the world, actually the source of evil? And it presents an interesting idea and an interesting thing to discuss and look at. But the Old Testament is basically where, we have to start out of. And it's an interesting thing because, first of all, we have to look at origins. Okay. And let's do that. Let's look at the origin of what we have believed. And the reason I want to look at that is because basically we have been told by those who instructed us in religious groups that our Judeo-Christian ethic and our Christian religion is the true religion and the only way by which we can be saved. And what our tradition tells us, and we kind of looked at that this morning, is that the first 5 books of the Bible, of the Old Testament, were written by Moses. Okay? Which is an interesting fact on the basis of something I'm going to share with you now. Historians who have studied and understand this, and the evidence that is compiled even in the Bible itself, shows that no, there was a fellow who comes along in a place called Babylon, which is actually present-day Iraq, and his name is Ezra. And it seems as though Ezra is the one who compiles the first 5 books of the Bible. In fact, when we talk about our Christian heritage and our Jewish heritage, there are 3 things that, are worth considering. One is the temple, which is the seat of all sacrifice and learning. 2 is the law, which is the foundation upon which our culture and our religion is based. And 3, of course, is the Christ, which is the power upon which salvation is based. All of these, now, interestingly enough, are proved by the Bible that we carry around as Christians, per se. All 3, the temple, the law, and the Christ, are proved to have originated not with the Jewish nation, not with the Christian nation, but by those who we consider to be the pagans or the false religions of Iran and Iraq. That's the source of the basis of our religious culture. Okay. Yet, even to this day, we look upon these as evil, and of course that of Israel and the West as good, see? But let me just quickly look, and we've done this before, but just very quickly, because it forms the basis of what we were going to talk about. Go to page 403 in Little Bibles. The rest of you go to a book that we don't generally get into. It's called 2 Chronicles, and it's chapter 36. 2 Chronicles, chapter 36. And in verse 22, there's an interesting thing. In the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia. Now, Persia is what is known today as Iran. That's the country of Iran, and that time was called Persia. The first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, that the word of the Lord spoken by the mouth of Jeremiah might be accomplished, the Lord stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia, and he made a proclamation saying, all the kingdoms of the earth have the Lord given me, and has charged me to build him a house in Jerusalem, which is in Judah. So now there is an interesting thing that we have to understand, the temple, the most holy temple, was built not by a Jew, not by a Christian, but by basically one that we would call today a Muslim. And in fact, he was a follower of Zoroaster, and the god that he followed that stirred his heart was Ahura Mazda, a god that our religion would consider a false god. Okay? Remember something, Cyrus was not Jewish, he was not Christian. He was a follower of the, what we call pagan god Ahura Mazda, and it was the pagan god Ahura Mazda which the Bible says stirred Cyrus to build the temple of the Jews. Okay, so that's an interesting fact. Now, here is, quote unquote, God going to select somebody to build the temple, and he selects somebody completely outside of the realm of the chosen people, completely outside of the realm of Christian people. He chooses somebody who we would regard as somebody of a follower of a false religion, and somebody who we would regard today as a Muslim. Now, let's look at the Christ. Well, Jehoshua, the Christ, Jesus, the Christ. Who was it that came and declared the Christ as the king in the Christmas story? The Magi. And the Magi were astrologers who came from Iran. And their god was Ahura Mazda, and their prophet was Zoroaster. Here you have two of the basic fundamental foundations of our heritage, which is the temple and the Christ, and both are originating in this strange place called Persia, which is now Iran, and through the authorship of a very strange god called Ahura Mazda and a very strange Persian prophet named Zoroaster. Here we, and why? Well, there was plenty of rabbis around that could have went and said Jesus. There was plenty of people who were around who could have gone and said, well, Jesus is the Lord. Why look to Iran and bring followers of a strange God and followers of a strange prophet all the way from Iran, from Persia, to come and say this is the Christ? So you wouldn't have the identity of the Christ as king if it wasn't for those who worship the false religion, as we call it, and you wouldn't have the temple if it wasn't for those who worship the false religion. The last thing that we want to just real quickly is the law. The law. Now that's the third of the trio. We've already found that the temple and the Christ did not originate with Jews or Christians. They originated with the people of Iran. And now we go to Iraq, where we have, in residency now Saddam Hussein, and that's Babylon. And look in the book, page 409. You'll find on page 409 in a book called Ezra. Okay? In a book called Ezra. And we're going to see something that's, I think, is pretty interesting. On page 409, in Ezra chapter 7 and verse 10, look what it says. Ezra chapter 7. Ezra had prepared his heart to seek the law of the Lord and to do it and to teach in Israel statutes and judgments. So it says Ezra is going to prepare. Now, the next part is the important part. Verse 11. This is a copy of a letter that King Artaxerxes gave to Ezra, okay, a scribe of the words of the commandments of the Lord and of his statutes to Israel. And Artaxerxes said, Ezra, the priest, the scribe of the law of God of heaven, I make a decree that all the people of Israel, priests and Levites in my realm, which are minded of their own free will to go up to Jerusalem, have to obey this law written by Ezra. Look at verse 13. This decree is made. Look at verse 14. You are sent by the king with the law which is in your hand. And look at verse 21. And I, Artaxerxes, do make a decree that whosoever or whatsoever Ezra, the scribe of the law of God, shall require it be done. So here then you have the law being authorized and commanded to be obeyed by who? By Moses? No. By the Pope? No. By the rabbi? No. By King Artaxerxes, who was at that time king of Iraq. So now we have the law given to us by the Iraqis, who also worshipped Zoroaster's god Ahura Mazda. We have the temple coming through that which is Cyrus of Iran, and we have the discovery of the Christ coming through that which is the Magi of Iran. So Iran and Iraq, these two strange countries that we have so much trouble with now, are directly responsible for giving us the temple, the law of God, and the Christ. And yet, according to us, these are the evil religions. These are the evil religions. So, what other kind of evidence do we have now? We've seen evidence here. Cyrus built the temple, the Magi declared the Christ, and Ezra wrote the law, not Moses. And what other kind of evidence is there? Let's see, shouldn't we try to see if we can find some evidence that indeed Moses was not the writer of the first 5 books? There's evidence in the Bible that Moses did that, because now I want to give it. Moses is supposed to be the writer of the first 5 books of the Bible. Okay, watch this. Go to page 187 in the book of Deuteronomy. And I really open this because I want to show you something. It's really interesting. Deuteronomy in the Bible, and go to chapter 34. All right. I know a lot of you who get the TV tapes, and this is an opportunity for you to stop put it on pause or stop it or whatever. Get the Bible, because I want you to see this for yourself. Deuteronomy chapter 34. This is written by Moses, okay? Look at chapter 34, verse 5. Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab according to the word of the Lord. Okay, now look at verse 6. And he buried him, in other words, God buried Moses in a valley in the land of Moab over against Beth-peor, but no man knows of his sepulchre unto this day. Did you see this? No one in the world has ever been able to write an account of their own death and burial. And not only did he write an account of his own death and burial, he's not positive of the exact spot where he got buried. So there's a proof. There is absolute proof that Moses could not have written the first 5 books of the Bible because he gives an account of his own death and where he's buried. So then we prove without a shadow of a doubt that Ezra indeed wrote this, and we prove without a shadow of a doubt that Ezra indeed wrote it under the authorship of the king of Iraq, King Artaxerxes, and that the movement of that law came from a strange god named Ahura Mazda that Christianity knows nothing about, that Judaism knows nothing about. You can look at that, until the cows come home, but you can't change the fact that you have somebody who's supposed to be writing about their own death and their own burial, although not quite sure where he was buried. Yet the church, religion, Christianity steadfastly maintains that it was Moses who authored these documents. The Bible shows, no, it couldn't have been. And yet, who is it that gives you the temple upon which your salvation is based, that gives you the law upon which your salvation is based, that gives you the Christ upon which your salvation is based? The unsaved. In other words, if you didn't have the unsaved from Iran and Iraq, you couldn't have salvation, because they were the ones who were given the job to do the thing. You know, if this is the case, and the few who are sitting here and you who are sitting home on television, and I get letters from people and they get mad and all of this stuff, why didn't anybody ever tell you this? For instance, everybody without question believed, who else could have written the Old Testament but Moses? I mean, he was the only guy. But why didn't somebody tell you? He couldn't have done it because there is an account of his death and where he got buried. You can't. If you're dead, you can't write books. And you can't tell people where they buried you once you're dead. That's over with. So it couldn't be. Why didn't anybody tell you that? Why didn't anybody tell you that the followers of the strange pagan gods were actually the ones responsible for the temple and the law and for declaring the Christ? Nobody told you that. You believe the way you do. You believe the way you always have believed because of the priesthood, which has taught you the Old Testament. Okay. These same people who kept this from you and myriads of other things are described by a prophet named Jeremiah. And they're described aptly, and I'd like you to look at page 623. Go to the book of Jeremiah. On page 623, Jeremiah chapter 2. And Jeremiah in chapter 2 speaks of the priests. And these are the religious. These are God's chosen people, folks. These are the religious people. Jeremiah chapter 2. And let's look at verse 8, okay? The priest said not, "Where is the Lord?" Have you ever gone to a church and heard a minister or a priest say, "Where is God?" And they that handle the law knew me not. The pastors also transgressed against me. The prophets prophesied by Baal and walked off after things that did not profit. So there's a condemnation coming from quote-unquote God against pastors, priests, and prophets. Go a few pages to page 627. You look at Jeremiah chapter 5. And look at Jeremiah chapter 5 and verse 31. And what does it say? The prophets prophesy falsely. The priests bear rule by their means, and my people love to have it so, but what will you do in the end? In other words, we do. We love to go into these churches and see everything all dressed up in the robes and the hats, and we love to have the prophecies, and we'll buy books, and somebody will buy, there's a book, and I'll tell you right now, I'm not going to name the book because then it sounds like I'm not, but there is a book out right now that this guy has made 9 prophecies, and everybody is buying it and selling by the millions, and people are walking around, oh, did you see the first prophecy? Did you see the second prophecy? And the guy admits it's fiction. It's fiction. There's no documentation about where it came from. It's fiction. And here, what do? We love it. We don't question it. Nobody questions it. I can question. People question me about where this stuff comes from. But otherwise, we say things to people. We hide behind the temple. We hide behind the veil. We hide behind the books. And it says in the Bible, the prophets prophesy falsely, and then the priests who are in the temple go ahead and carry out the rules and regulations, and you follow them. And you don't ask anybody any questions. You don't dare ask anybody any questions. I mean, here you have a situation, and you know it. Jesus Christ was slaughtered by God because God couldn't figure out a way to solve his problem of forgiveness. So what did he do? He resorted to violence, and you never question it. Oh, that must be. Stupid. It's as dumb and it's as bizarre as it can be, because that means that God is no better than we are. He's got a problem. He can't figure a way out. He gets ticked off. He resorts to violence. He starts killing people. That's his way out. Nobody questions that. You can't dare question it. If you go, you can walk up to any church and walk up and say, I'd like to, question whether Jesus was really crucified. I don't really believe that. That's heresy. That's blasphemy. Oh, it's a terrible thing. No, it's not. It's reality. It's a rational way of finally bringing to the... Is this even rational? Is this the way of something called God that will kill somebody and that'll satisfy my anger and then I can forgive everybody for drinking and smoking and everything? So what happens? When you come against the system, Jeremiah came against the system. In the book, this voice came against the system. The priests are no good. He said the prophets are a bunch of phonies. And he said they're all a bunch of hypocrites. They're a bunch of liars. What he was talking about are the people that wrote the Bible. What he was talking about are the people who made the rules and regulations and interpreted the Bible, the ones that you have, your whole foundation of religion is based on these people that Jeremiah was killing or talking about. So how did the church react to this Jeremiah because he was critical of them? Look at page 645. Jeremiah chapter 26. This is what they said about Jeremiah, about, what should happen to him because he was critical of the priests and the prophets and so forth. Jeremiah chapter 26 and verse 11. Then spoke the priests and the prophets unto the princes and to all the people, saying, This man is worthy to die, for he has prophesied against the city. See, and basically that's exactly what religion is today. They cannot tolerate anybody questioning them. They cannot tolerate anybody criticizing them. And so when you have some kind of an institution that is above criticism, you have some kind of an institution that is above being called down for its error, you have an evil. Jeremiah came against the system of religion that is the foundation of morality in this country, against the priests and the prophets and against their traditions. And yet, it was these very same priests and prophets who drew up the beliefs that became the foundation of your life, of your religion. And your mothers and fathers taught you of it. And their mothers and fathers taught them of it. And the pilgrims came over and landed on a rock somewhere so that they could freely practice all of this bizarre stuff that was taught by these people who were a bunch of hooligans that Jeremiah said were a bunch of liars. People died for this. And yet, according to the scriptures, the people that were teaching it were nothing but liars. The foundation of God's biblically chosen people has been one of the foundation of the life. And what kind of people were they? You know, what kind of people were God's chosen people? I'm talking about the people in the Bible. If you look at it literally in Exodus 22:29, it says, the firstborn of your sons shall you give to me. Do you know what it means? You kill them. It means you kill your firstborn, and that firstborn goes to God by killing. And they did. How did they kill their little children? The God's chosen people, how did they kill their little children to sacrifice them to God? Go to page 629. And you go back to Jeremiah again, and it'll give you a graphic description of what they did. These are God's chosen people who, in God's name did these things. Jeremiah chapter 7 and verse 31. They have built the high places of Tophet, which is in the valley of the son of Hinnom, to burn their sons and their daughters in the fire, which I commanded them not, neither came it into my heart. That's what they used to do. In order to sacrifice their firstborn to God, they would take them up into this high place and throw them down into something that was sort of like a volcano. Little kids. It's God's chosen people. And they felt that they were doing the will of God, and they were told to do this by the priest, the pastor. And I'll tell you something right now. It was nothing more than human sacrifice to appease the gods, and that's the story of Jesus Christ, and you still believe it. Human sacrifice to appease the gods. Animal sacrifice ran rampant. They still do it. There are places even in this country where they sacrifice animals. What does it say? Page 579, look at Isaiah. In the book of Isaiah, Isaiah chapter 1. Isaiah chapter 1 and talks about animal sacrifice. To what purpose? Verse 11. To what purpose is the multitude of your sacrifices? I am full of the burnt offerings of rams and fat of fed. I delight not in the blood of bullocks and goats. When you come to appear before me, who has required this of your hand to tread my courts? Who told you to do this? Who told you to kill bulls and goats? And who told you this? In spite of that fact, it continues. And nobody reads this. Of course, they don't do it anymore, but it was the basis, it was the foundation of these wild people known as God's chosen people. In Ezekiel 22:26, Ezekiel said, her priests have violated my law. We have fallen into line with those whose ways were actually an abomination, as written in the Bible, that we consider it as written about them. We have kissed the words in the Bible, even though the words of Jeremiah are condemning the very same things that are part of our foundation. So it's from these religious traditions which were born out of violence that mentalities have developed, and we've seen the world as it is. Probably more war and more violence has come out of religious teachings and has spawned itself out of religion than from any other organized group, and yet somehow we turn our back and are reluctant to question the things that go on. Even to the point where religious people abuse children on the altar practically. We're still quiet about it. All over the place. It's not like it happened once or twice. I'm talking about all over the place it happens. But you can't say this. Any other organization and the FBI or something would be all over them, shut them down like that. But it goes on and has gone on, it will go on. Rules and regulations that are placed on your back. The tribe leaders declare that you must believe this, you must do this, you must do that, and do the other thing. And for the most part, people file into these buildings called churches, hide out behind stained glass windows or whatever, sing these magic songs, give some money, and then hear somebody stand up and read the words that extol all of these horrible things that you and I say, my God, God kills his son, God's going to blow up the world in Armageddon, and all of these horrors that are attributed to God, and we say that's our religion. We run to meetings, and we got to do this, and we got to do that, we got to learn this, and we got to learn that, but there's something that's important, and I think it happens to me, and it probably happens to some here, and it may even be happening to you who are watching this program, and that is, you can only try that which doesn't work for so long, and then you begin to become neurotic. You begin to become neurotic. You're expecting something. I think we had, when we have our round table, you have questions. People ask questions about, what is it that causes, why does God let airplanes fall out of the sky? And why does God allow this? And why does God allow this woman to kill her children? And all this. Never ever understanding, never ever considering the fact of the negligence of people, the violence that are conjured up in people's minds, and wondering, where does it come from? Why does it happen? The responsibility is never placed upon us, but always shoved off into some other realm. We're told to follow the light and be like the light, but if you ever noticed, just when you think you're getting close to it, the light goes off and it's not there, and then you got to go running down some other hole. But what does the Bible say? It says, be in this mess, be in the world, but don't be a part of it. But I'll tell you something, it's not the world that is evil, because the world is a beautiful place of mountains and valleys and animals and gorgeous things that are absolutely beyond compare in their beauty. But then we introduce cultures with religious ideas, and we start to poison the minds of people. And then we find out that, no, it's not the world that's evil, it's religion. And the world is actually an opportunity for you to live and to love and to learn and to move away from the mandates of religion. So basically what has happened, we've failed to take the opportunity because we've received meaning of life from ourselves, from the hands of other people. Religious people for the most part. And what the meaning is that the very center of all things that are beautiful is within you. There is music in the center of your own being. There is life in the center of your own being. And all that what you have read, credited to the God's chosen people, okay, actually the beautiful part that was given to God's chosen people, or the credit given to God's chosen people, wasn't from them at all. It was, as we stated in the beginning, from the people that you and I have been taught are the enemy. You and I have been taught are evil. You and I have been taught are false religions. We have the true religion. So we've taken this, we've rubbed these people off as enemies and as followers of strange cultists, evil religions, never ever being able to stand up and tell the truth that if it wasn't for the religions of Zoroaster and Ahura Mazda of Iran and Iraq, the things that are the foundations of our religions wouldn't exist. And then we've been told to read the Bible, and we all interpret the Bible in different ways. And yet never have we been told that the only book that really matters is described in Revelation chapter 5 and verse 1, where it says, "And I saw in the right hand of him who sits on the throne a book written within and on the backside sealed with 7 seals." That's the Word of God. The book of life is contained within the energy that flows from the lower aspect of that which is the physical entity upward through the spine to impact on the pineal gland of the brain, which in turn throws open the right side. That's the book. That's the words that are not written on paper but are written in spirit within each one of us. The book of life written within you. And so when we consider the source of evil, then you have to say all of that which you have gone through in your life and all of the struggles that we see people going through even to this day, so much of it falls at the foot of religion. And so much of the separation from other people and cultures is because of religion, suspicions of others. So much of our leaning towards violence, our teaching children about devils and demons and crucifixions and blood and guts and Armageddons, all comes from religion. All of it comes from religion. So many of the wars that we've seen through our lives have religion at the base of them. And then we can look at this world which has been systematically destroyed in a great part by religion and really come to the conclusion, no, it's not religion that is good and the world that is evil. It is the world that is good because the world was created by God. It has to be good. Religion was created by man, and it's evil. And therefore the time is at hand as we experience this age when we see the collapse of institutions and revolutions all over the place. Is it interesting? I don't know when you're seeing this tape, God knows what is happening. But we have seen nations collapse, their traditional structures collapse in the Soviet Union, in South Africa, in Israel and Jordan and Palestine, where all of these things that were unheard of have happened. And we just recently came through an election here, which is the first step in a revolution. You saw the closest thing to a revolution in this country that you'll see. And that was people just going into voting booths and throwing everybody out. And it's part of that same thing. It wasn't because the Democrats were in and the Republicans are going to throw them out, because I can guarantee you, if it was the Republicans who were in, they would have thrown them out. It was just a question of revolution. I saw, when John and I were talking about Uranus, and Uranus portraying that which turns everything upside down and causes revolution. That's how Uranus is described. And when I saw the election results and they had a picture of the Capitol turned upside down and they said 1994 U.S. Revolution, Washington turned upside down. Sure, it's exact, but it's only the beginning. It's just the very beginning of what's going to happen in this country as it's happening all over the world. Strange and amazing things are going to happen. And now the people who have been for years, and the Republicans who have been saying, no, we don't want to, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. Now they're the ones that take the heat because they got to make the rules, and somebody will get mad at them. But that is just a part of politics. The real essence of what I hope you saw was this tremendous move towards revolution, this tremendous move toward just separating from the establishment and bringing it down. And that's exactly what happened. A lot of people don't understand why they did what they did, and you'll see more of it, and in a much deeper way as we move along into the coming years and coming months of this new age. So, that basically, as if I was to reach a conclusion and sum this up, I would say that if your church, if your religion have told you the truth of the origin of the temple and the law and the Christ as having come from Iran and Iraq and out of the mind of Ahura Mazda and Zoroaster, then they would have credibility. But I can guarantee you that there is not one of your churches that has instructed you in the origin of the temple, the law, and the Christ coming from the people and the strange religions of Iran and Iraq. Therefore, they hid that from you, which makes them evil. And as we consider these things, then also we have to consider, too, the fact that this very same religion that we follow never has dwelt or allowed us to understand that the people who fostered this development of this religion actually were called down by this one Jeremiah, who was a revolutionary in this Bible, and who absolutely ripped them apart from top to bottom as phonies and as frauds and as fakers and as hypocrites and all of the rest of the words that he could muscle. And he directed it to the most holy people who walked along. And then came the strange Jehoshua the Christ, the Jesus Christ, who was actually killed by those self-same people in a mythological way. Okay, so who's evil, who's good? I'll leave that up to you. But if I was to take a bet, I would say that what we're going to see is the diminishing of religion as an entity as the years come and they grow. What will grow actually is the evolution of a unified earth with people coming together. One of the most beautiful things I've heard, what's happening now between Jordan and Israel, which is absolutely beyond, what they said in the television? They said you would expect to see somebody over there walking on water instead of what has happened. There are trucks now delivering merchandise going from Israel to Jordan, and there are trucks delivering merchandise from Jordan to Israel. It's absolutely bizarre. It couldn't possibly have happened. And these are the strange things that are playing a part now in our country, and I'm so happy to see that the revolution has started. And it's a love revolution, and it's going to be a beautiful thing. But let's put ourselves into perspective and don't think that religion can play a part in it, because obviously it has failed since its inception and it will continue to fail. If you can get religion out of your life, then you can get God into it. That's the crux of this thing. Thanks. We'll see you. Bye-bye.